Welcome to the Two and Under podcast. We are the only dedicated Newcastle United podcast in the entire Southern Hemisphere. I'm Jack. With me as usual today is Bobby and Ballarat. How you doing, Bobby?
I'm good, Jack. How are you?
I'm very good. And we've got a special guest today. So this person has been involved with Newcastle United. She's a club employee with Newcastle United since 2004. She's been full-time since around 2016. She's been there for most of the great and the not so great moments across that time. She's kind of part of the furniture around St James's Park and the Benton training ground now. But I'm not talking about Derek Wright here. It's not Derek Wright. Every club needs somebody who's good to do this job, and especially in these days of kind of social media and instant reactions. So her work is beamed to hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people across the globe. She was probably the busiest person at the entire club in January. And best of all for us, she's Australian. Hailing from Bendigo in regional Victoria. Welcome to the Two and Under pod, the official Newcastle United club photographer, Serena Taylor.
Hi, Australia. How you doing?
How you doing, Serena?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Really good to have the opportunity to talk to you. Bobby was doing some networking, so Bobby's a good networker. He's good at messaging people, and he seems to know lots of people. So he's pulled it out the bag again.
Well done, Bobby.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on. It's made sense for us, an Australian who works at the club we all love. So, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
So to begin with, we'll chat a bit about how a girl from regional Victoria ends up taking photographs at a professional football club 10,000 miles from home. And we'll get into some of the things you've seen in your time with the club over that period. We'll talk about some of the personalities and chat about the prospects for the job now that the club is on the verge of being transformed at what must be a very exciting time. So we will be back after this and we'll get straight into it. So Serena, you're from Bendigo in regional Victoria. All I really know about Bendigo is that there's a bank there because there's a branch in Ipswich, which is near where I live. What was it like being brought up in Bendigo, and how does it compare to Newcastle upon Tyne?
It was back then quite a very sleepy sort of country town or city even. You just got up, you went to school. I was a basketball player, so I spent a lot of my time playing basketball. And to compare over here, it's just completely two different worlds apart in all aspects.
Bobby, you're from Ballarat, which is quite close to Bendigo. The two places are similar, are they? Both begin with B, obviously.
We're similar, but we deem ourselves to be arch rivals, I think. There's a rivalry between Bendigo and Ballarat, but no, Central Victoria is where it's at. Greatest place on earth. So, it's great to have Serena, who's from Bendigo, and reminiscing about the old home place.
How old were you when you left Bendigo, Serena?
I first left when I was 22, and I'm 45 now, so it's a long time away.
And how did you end up in Newcastle then? So you left when you were 22. You maybe travelled a little bit. Did you do what all Australians do and go to London and go to Edinburgh? And
I did what every Australian does: puts on a backpack, goes to London. I arrived there in November of '99 and got a job working at Harrods, of all places. And obviously coming from a warm country, I mean, November time, it's not hot, but it's a decent weather to November over here. It was pretty cold, and London completely different to Bendigo. It's hustle and bustle, and I just couldn't cope. And in the February, I had already organised to go and work on cruise lines. So I rang them up, and before I knew it, it was Valentine's Day of all days. Jumped on a plane to Buenos Aires and joined my first cruise ship. So awesome. From the cruise ship sort of thing is where I kind of met an Englishman and that's how I've eventually moved over to England. Yeah.
Isn't it mad? I've got a toddler and she's nearly 2. Isn't it just mad? Like, just the idea of just jumping on a plane and then just going on a cruise ship, like when you've got no responsibilities. Bobby's got 2 daughters as well. That's just hearing you talk about that, it seems like I don't even have time to go to the toilet these days.
I know that feeling as well. I look back and I think, why did I ever leave the cruise lines? It was it was a really good time. I traveled the world and did what I wanted to do all my life, which was take photos, travel, and get paid. And that was like one thing that my mum, coming from Bendigo, my mum had said, you know, you need to get a real job. Stop living in dreamland. No one's going to pay a girl from Bendigo to travel the world and take pictures. It's not happening. And I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And off I did that for numerous years. And yeah, it was a good experience, which has then ended up bringing me to Newcastle and landing an assistant photography job here about 5 months after I arrived.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about how you got that job as the assistant club photographer then. How does it work? Is it sort of like, does someone see your photos or do you just ring up and send them a portfolio?
No. Well, what happened in my case is I obviously, like, I worked at Harrods down in London, and then I took a job at Phoenix department store. I just needed a job, and any job, it didn't matter. I just needed to get my foot in the ground. And a little job in the back of the classified section. So it wasn't even in the job section of the Chronicle. It was just a little bar saying, assistant photographer required for local sporting club, please dial this number. And that was the end. And I rang the number up, and a woman answered, and she said who she was, from Newcastle United. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to do a little bit of research. Obviously, I didn't know anything about football, didn't know anything about the club other than I'd heard of Alan Shearer. And I thought, right, well, I may as well apply for this job. It's a photography job. I'm working in a department store. It's not really what I want to do. And had an interview, got sent out to take some photos, took them, showed my portfolio. And within kind of 2 weeks, he was like, right, can you come to this game? And I said, oh, I'm actually meant to be working in it. And the woman at the time said, look, it's Manchester United. You need to come to this game. And I'm like, all right, then. Well, I'll ring my boss at Phoenix department store and say, sorry, I'm not coming in. And they basically said, if you don't come into work, that's it. And I said, all right, then, see you later. I've got a job. See you. So then went on to the Manchester United game, and that was my first day at work at Newcastle United.
That's bonkers, isn't it?
Local football club makes it sound like, I don't know, some kind of like kids football club, doesn't it, or something?
Well, something out of Bendigo. It's like,
well, yeah, like I never. Well, obviously, I didn't really know much about Newcastle United Football Club at all. Yeah, I'm not going to say I was ignorant to it. I just didn't know because I'd never been a football fan. I hadn't grown up playing football. I was a basketball player, so. Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, it might be sort of like a Sunday league kind of team or something, but yeah, no.
Yeah, so for those who don't know as well, Bendigo and Ballarat are very AFL-dominated cities. Not much soccer happens in our towns or cities, so when you do grow up, it's not the first sport of choice or what you're pushed into, and basketball is quite popular as well, so for Serena not to have heard of Newcastle United, it's not surprising really from Bendigo. And yeah, it's funny. So how did you adapt to the Geordie culture and the difference of life over there? Because I know when I went to visit, it was a lot different, and especially the accent. And I didn't understand a word of what they were saying. So how did you adapt to all that?
Well, funnily enough, before I came over, I lived up in Scotland for around 8 months. And it was kind of like in between Inverness and Aberdeen. And so dealing with their accent and some of the words that they used, I found it wasn't such a massive transition to move into like the Geordie culture. Because the lad that I worked for up in Scotland, he was very broad, and I was constantly like, I don't know what you're saying. Can you explain that in English, please? And his wife was German, so trying to understand the two of them, it was challenging. But moving to Newcastle, I mean, I live in Cramlington. Everyone speaks English, so it's, yeah, you just get used to the words over time, and the phrases as well.
You've been there for long enough. I think you've got a little bit of a Geordie little twang there. I can definitely detect that.
Some people say that they can hear my Australian accent really well, but when I go home, they're like, "You speak English, as in from England."
To me, you've got the Geordie accent going. Like from an
Really?
Australian point of view, I'm like, yeah. So, but from Jack, it'll probably sound a bit different. He would say you sound more Aussie, but for me, it's definitely, I can hear the Geordie slang come out.
I often get asked, like, where are you from? Because they can't quite detect whether it's Australian, New Zealand, South African, or somewhere down south. They don't, like, they know that I'm not a Geordie, but they're like, where exactly are you from? So, yeah.
Do you know any other Australians around the northeast then?
Not really, no.
Yes,
No.
It's a different experience because for me coming here, there's lots of English people. So, you know, there's somebody who lives on my street who's from Darlington, which is not far at all from where I was born.
I went to Darlington yesterday, sorry.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I caught 2 trains down to look at a car. Sorry, that's got nothing to do with football.
You go to all the good places.
Yeah, it was lovely.
But yeah, so yeah, if it's different for you because there isn't that kind of culture of moving away, is there, or staying away, especially sort of more far-flung areas of the UK. Everyone goes to London, don't they? All the Aussies.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you go to London, you can find people and you can build a kind of relationship. And up here, there's very few and far between. So if I happen to hear an accent that is Australian, I'm like a beacon. I run straight to them, like, where are you from? Are you from Australia? Where are you from? And try to just like build that relationship, because they would be in the same situation as me, as, you know, coming from Australia, not having a lot of your friends and family here. So yeah.
Absolutely.
We've got a little we're going to do a little pop quiz thing here just to test how Australian you are or how Geordie you've become. Right, so I'm gonna fire some questions at you, and you just answer. Just say the first thing that comes into your head, or say yes or no. Right. So the first question is Newcastle weather or Victorian weather?
Victorian.
Tomato sauce on pies, yes or no?
Yes.
Vegemite or Marmite?
Vegemite. I had that this morning, actually. Sorry.
You can get Vegemite, can you, in Newcastle?
Yes. You have to go to Tesco's, the big one, but you can get Vegemite and Tim Tams. Not the whole range of Tim Tams, but you can get them.
We had this debate on our chat about Tim Tams, and what were you talking about?
Penguins. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Nope.
All right. So far you're still fully Australian. Eldon Square or Westfield?
Westfield.
Big Market or King Street?
Where's King Street?
Melbourne.
See, I've not been to King Street in Melbourne.
Big Market then. That's one for the Geordies.
Okay.
Tyne Bridge or Sydney Harbour Bridge?
Sydney Harbour.
Jimmy Nail or Jimmy Barnes?
Jimmy Barnes. Definitely.
Teletubbies or the Wiggles?
Oh, definitely the Wiggles. I love the Wiggles.
Ant and Dec or Hamish and Andy?
Oh, sorry. I have to go Ant and Dec. I have to say Ant and Dec. Just because they follow me on Instagram.
They seem like nice lads as well.
They are. They're canny lads. I really like them. Yeah.
St. James's Park or the MCG?
Oh, St. James's Park. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. So it looked like you were going fully Australian there, and I think Australia won 6-4. Newcastle made a little bit of a comeback.
Yeah.
Does that feel about right? 60% Australian, 40% Geordie?
I'd say less, but I'd say 90% Australian, but I'm biased.
Well, you did get you gave the sympathy vote to Ant and Dec, so you know it would have been me.
I've never even heard of Hamish and Andy. Maybe I haven't been here.
Who are they? Sorry, I don't know who they are.
They're the
Bobby
Aussie
said they were
version.
really famous.
They're really famous. I don't know. Like they've got their own TV shows or on all the radio shows.
If you're watching, guys, I'm really sorry.
I should have said Kath and Kim. Everyone knows Kath and Kim.
Compared to who?
And compared to Hamish and Andy. If I'd have said Ant and Dec or Kath and Kim.
Oh, I still would have said Ant
and Dec.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Ant and Dec come and do the Australia thing here, don't they? They do the jungle.
Yes. I have sort of said to them a couple of times, "Oh, if you ever need anyone, I'm Australian. I wouldn't mind doing it." but they haven't replied. So I don't think I could handle it anyway. I'm not into eating weird things.
Kangaroos, anuses, and things like that.
No. Oh no.
Stay where you are.
Yeah.
And on the note of kangaroos, I've just got a question for you. What's the difference between a kangaroo and a kangaroot? One's an Australian marsupial and one's a Geordie stuck in a lift.
Oh wow!
Oh boy!
That's a nice one, isn't it? Serena's going to be telling that at work. I can tell.
I'll have to. Yeah.
All right. So we've established there that you're still Australian. Well done.
Congratulations.
I just want to get on to a little bit now. So, how do kind of people around Newcastle react? You said that when you arrived, you hadn't really heard of Newcastle United, but I'm sure that changed quite quickly when you realised kind of the standing the club holds in the city, and the absolute obsession everybody's got with it. So how do fans and people around react when they found out what your job is, and what are your sort of interactions like with Newcastle fans?
It's only just happened sort of more recently, probably since Rafa came to the club. He really liked to have a lot of positive photos, and sort of he did a trip around all the landmarks in Newcastle, and I had to go and photograph them all. And kind of from there, that's sort of when people started to take note. And then he sort of started his Instagram page and would tag me in. He started following me, which I didn't have very many followers at the time. And then that's kind of just exploded from there. What I find is, going to the games, the fans are so vocal, and they're such an important part to the atmosphere at the ground and how the lads perform on the pitch as well. And when I'm with the fans, you look at them, they're all screaming and shouting and singing the whole time, and sometimes I have to sit there with my hands over my ears, it's that loud. And just having them standing up with their scarves. And basically one of the games I went to, there was a lad called Johnny, and I'm good friends with him now. And he was standing up and he's like, "Yeah, Newcastle," with his Newcastle United scarf. So I started to take pictures. And at that point in time, I didn't like to be in front of people. I'm very self-conscious and don't like to be for me, sitting here on camera, it's not natural. I'm behind the camera. And so I took his picture, and then we put it on the website because we'd won the game and it was celebrating that we'd won, and the fans were great. And then I just started building on that. And from his one picture, now everyone, when I go to the games, all shouting out to me. They want their pictures taken. They want to show that they're having a good time. And they want me to put them on my own Instagram page and go from there. So, I have a lot to do with the fans now, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and it is just an area that is totally all fans love the club, but the region particularly, it's a one club city. The location of the stadium, slap bang in the middle of the city centre. We're going to talk about the takeover later and the kind of atmosphere since then. But it's an area where everyone, you're shopping on a Saturday or something, everyone's got the Newcastle shirts on. So it's that kind of So yeah, I was interested in like if you tell people what your job is, or if they find out, that must get people excited.
Yeah, I try to play it down a little bit. I mean, like when they find out that where you work, it's a million questions, and you have to be careful what you say to people, because one wrong thing out of line and you could end up in trouble. So like you do need to be careful. But I find I'd say 90% of the fans are great. They're unbelievable.
You can just tell people you work for a local sports club, and you don't have to say which club it is.
I usually just say, I'm a photographer, and they're like, what do you take photos of? Oh, just some football. And sometimes it goes a little bit further, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah.
So you were an assistant photographer when you first started in 2004.
I was, so, yes.
2004, that was end of Bobby Robson. Bobby was
I came just after Bobby left. So I think it was Graham Souness just been nominated as the manager. I didn't really have a lot to do with the players and things back then. I had a little bit, but not a great deal. There was another club photographer at the time, and he did literally everything. Yeah.
So now, is it just you, or is there kind of a team of you? And do you have like an office in the training ground or St James's Park or something?
I've got 3 offices actually. We have an office at the training ground where myself and all of the media team sit. It's a bit of a small office, really. And then I used to have my match day office, which is still there. But when COVID hit, we weren't allowed to use the offices. So literally you came in, then you went into the emergency tunnel and sat pitch side, regardless of the weather or what have you. We can now use that office, but I don't really use it very much anymore. And then we've got an area upstairs on level 5, which is like, your Monday to Friday office hours. But we only sort of use that area when we need to go to St James Park during the week, which, if there's a signing happening, we'll go up and that's where we'll base ourselves, and then sort of, take the signing around all the different areas of the ground and take their photos. And so, yeah.
And if you go into the training ground, because the fans love the training ground photos now as well, don't they? They say like photos of Bruno or whoever it might be, everyone gets excited about the training photos, especially since Eddie Howe's come in.
Oh, Eddie's amazing. He's like, I can't big him up enough. He's a wonderful person, and watching him on his first day at training, he just blew my mind. I didn't really know anything about Eddie or his staff. As I've said, like I'm not a football fan. I go in, I do my job, and that's my priority. But since he's come in, the whole atmosphere has just changed, and it's such a good environment now. And we're winning games as well, which helps.
Which helps, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We've talked about Eddie Howe on this pod, and it was the first press conference he did. So you'll go to the press conferences as well, do you, and take the photos?
Do.
Still photos, yeah.
So
it was that first press conference where he was talking, and he just seems like such a man of kind of like quiet dignity and hard work, and just a nice person, but who's got that bit of steel about him, and he just knows what he's doing. He seems so hard working.
He is, and you've got to rise to the challenge. He has high standards, and he expects you to rise to that, and that's how it should be in any Premier League club. Is you want the best, and so you've got to work, and you've got to work hard. Yeah.
When you're taking photos of the players, you have a bit of a chat and a bit of banter with them, I suppose. It's
constantly.
It's partly your job to make them help them feel at ease, or
I think because I've been at the club for so long, and as you said earlier, I'm part of the furniture basically. Not as much as Derek Wright. Rightly so. But,
he's been there since about 1600, hasn't he?
Has he been there since it started?
1892, yeah.
He's lovely. I love Derek. He's such a good lad. But yeah, no, you have to build that trust, and one photograph can destroy that relationship. So you need to be mindful of what you're taking and where that goes. So it's a tricky one.
And it's part of your job, I guess, to put them at ease and to make them feel comfortable. And like you were saying, you've been there for so long, so they can probably see your interactions with other staff and how that, you've been there and you're a part of the club kind of thing.
Well, like normally when they sign up for the club, I get about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to do like a variety of shots. So I'm running around like a crazy person trying to get 20-30 shots in the space of 20 minutes. But then, you're having that banter with them, you're asking them questions about their family, and you're just trying to break down those barriers of, I'm a photographer taking your photo, you need to look like this. You're trying to make them a human being, because that's what they are, and show their personality. A few years ago, I don't know if you saw the program covers where we did like a lifestyle shoot.
Yeah.
And we took them around different places in Newcastle and a little bit further afield. And that was so good for me because it was breaking down their barriers as professional football players and seeing the human behind that. And that it was really important to do. And, because at the end of the day, they are humans just like you and me. They're normal people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's when you've got footballers who are high profile, and they're so well known to everybody, especially in such a football mad city. But yeah, for you, like the way you're saying, they're just people, they're just colleagues sort of thing. So it's just like any of us having colleagues, isn't it?
Well, and that's the thing, like one of the questions I got asked when I applied for my job is, how are you going to be around famous people? And my reply was, I don't know who any of these guys are. So I'll end up treating them just like I'm treating you right now. And that's the kind of attitude that I have, is like a lot of my colleagues were quite happy when Kieran Trippier signed, and I was like, oh, who? Like, oh, he scored in the World Cup, and I was like, oh, okay. But funny enough, like Kieran and I were just having a talk the day he signed, and my colleague said, oh, Serena's from Australia, and he's like, oh, whereabouts? My brother lived in Shepparton. And that started a massive conversation about Bendigo and Shepparton and how I used to play basketball in Shepparton, and it just opened up a new dialect. And my colleagues standing there looking at us as though we were crazy. Here we are talking about his brother in Australia and nothing to do with football. But I guess that's how I get my job done, is like, it doesn't bother me.
But that's, I suppose, how you will break them down as well. I suppose they're sick of talking about football and only being known as footballers, and that's all they're good for, I suppose, that perceived for. So to actually connect on a different level, it'll be new to them. So yeah, that's fantastic. Shepparton, eh? Ooh.
Yeah, Shepparton. I think he played like soccer or football in Shepparton as well, I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you travel on the bus to away games or the flights to away games as well then? And all the backroom team? Yes,
we have 2 coaches now. Obviously with COVID, we couldn't all travel on the same coach. So anything over kind of 3 hours away, the whole media team will go with the players, either by plane. We fly down and then the coaches pick us up and take us to the hotel, or if it's under 3 hours, then we'll get a people mover and either drive it ourselves or get a driver to take us, because a lot of us have a lot of work to do after the game. People don't see the amount of hours that go in after a football match. So it's not just like an hour before the game and an hour after. I'm usually working until 12, 1, 2 o'clock, depending on what time the game kicks off. So and then the following day as well. So there's a lot of editing to do.
You'll have enjoyed the 3 away games in a week that we've just had then.
That was fantastic. Oh my gosh, yeah. Sorry, what was first? I've lost track of every day.
It was Southampton on a Thursday night, which is helpful, and then it was Chelsea, and then it was Everton on another Thursday night.
Right. So the story behind this: Southampton away. I'd had a car accident the day before, and I needed to get my car to the training ground. It was drivable. I needed to get it to the training ground because the team was staying down in London from Southampton to Chelsea because the airports were closed. So we couldn't get a flight back straight after Southampton. So instead of coming back on the Friday, they just stayed down and trained and then played on the Sunday. But I couldn't stay down, and neither could my boss. So my boss said he was going to drive to Southampton the morning of the game. I could catch the flight, but if I had to have my car at the training ground. And so I'm notoriously late always. Like I'm a couple of minutes before I need to be anywhere, because I'm one of those people that's, I could just do this. It'll only take a couple of minutes. And then before I know it, I'm like, oh, I'm late. So anyway, this particular morning, get up, get the girls to school. I'm on time. I'm like, yes, I'm bossing this. I'm going to get to the training ground. And one of the lads was at the training ground. He was going to drive me to the airport. I came off the roundabout onto the A19, and a couple of seconds up the road, I see flashing lights, and I'm like, oh, okay, slow down a bit. And then I was in a backtail of a car accident for 55 minutes. So and this was between if you know the A19, it's the Moor Farm roundabout and Killingworth Slip Road. So the accident was right at Killingworth Slip Road. So trying to get the traffic off there to carry on was a nightmare. Basically, I had to ring the lad at the training grounds, like, Serena, I need to get to the airport. I'm like, oh, well, you go. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I rang our security officer who was at the airport, and he's like, get here as soon as you can. I'm like, I'm still, like, haven't even come off the slip road yet, and I've got 10 minutes to get to the airport, which is a 20-minute journey. And then I ring one of my colleagues, and he'd actually already left. He likes to drive everywhere. It's just a personal choice of his. And he's like, oh, I've just left. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, I've literally just gone through the Tyne Tunnel. I'll come back and pick you up if you want. I was like, oh, please, because otherwise I don't know how I'm going to get down to Southampton. You know, the flight had gone. I was stuck. So he came back and picked me up. And then we drove the 5.5 hours down to Southampton. Got there about an hour before the team arrived. Did my job. Got back in the car with my boss, and then drove the other 5 hours all the way back home again. Got in at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Only to get up at 7 o'clock to get the kids to school.
Gee, I feel stressed. I feel stressed hearing that story.
It was very stressful. And then thankfully I got where was it next? It was Chelsea away. So my boss came and picked me up, and we took the car to the airport because we were flying back this time, and caught the train down to Chelsea. Stayed the night before, and then we had Everton, didn't we? So when I arrived back from Chelsea, the lady at the airport, Paula, she's fantastic, and she said, Serena, if I had known that it was you that was missing off the manifest, we had a private helicopter going down to Bournemouth, and they would have taken you down. I was like, no. Because I would have said to the helicopter, can you just go around St James Park so I can get some aerial shots before we head down? But so that was, last week was a very long week.
Yeah, it's unusual to have that amount of away games in that short space of time.
Definitely.
So next time that happens, it won't be the fans I'll be worried about. It'll be, what's Serena going to do?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought the fixture just was a worry for us trying to get all the podcasts done in time, but I think you had it worse.
I was looking at it going, oh my gosh! And if I had got that flight to Southampton, it would have been a lot easier. But it was literally because I was stuck in the back tail of an accident. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go anywhere. And I think that was the most frustrating thing, is for once in my life I was early and I was late again.
Australians love driving anyway, don't they? They think people here think nothing of jumping in the car and driving from Brisbane to Sydney, which is like 12 hours, and they have one break.
Funnily enough, like I worked at Hamilton Island for a little while, and it was during a bit of a crossover, and I drove from Bendigo to Hamilton Island for my job interview and landed it, and then got in the car, drove back, and then flew back again.
Yeah, there's heaps of us who drive from country Victoria to Queensland, and we don't, it's only 5 days just through the guts. It's all right.
Yeah. 5 days. And then it took me 24 hours.
Geordies can't drive to Leeds without having a break, It's 2 hours away.
I have to admit, getting older, like as soon as I get down to Weatherby Services, I'm like, please, can we just stop here? I need a little break, please.
Weatherby's a good service station as well.
It's fantastic.
It's a good one.
Yeah. There's plenty of facilities and there's food there, and you can get a Red Bull to keep you going for the rest of the day.
Keep you going. So just getting back to kind of your job then. Can you, without giving specifics, can you give us a bit of an idea about a transfer? So sort of a transfer is happening, and how much kind of notice do you get, and what's your role in that? Because your photos are the ones that everyone's waiting for,
I know, and I'm constantly getting people on social media tagging me in posts. When's this happening? When can we do this? When's the photos? I'm like, dude, give me a break. It's not done yet. Just let us do the job. Notice. Sometimes we get a little bit of notice. Sometimes it's the night before. It's basically in the transfer window. We're on call 24/7. Saturday, Sundays, any day something could happen. It's just a case of you're on call and you go and do the job when you're asked to. So
especially the last transfer window.
Yeah, five in that transfer window. It was interesting.
And it was three. So it would have been like the 3 away days in a week, wouldn't it? Bit of that hectic scheduling.
Yeah, and like we only get a certain amount of time as well. So obviously, like the player has so many things that he has to do in terms of medicals and meeting people and signing contracts, and there's just so many people involved. And it's not just us as a media team getting everything, and we have to have everything sort of ready and prepared, because as I said, we don't get a lot of time. And sometimes we get to go to the stadium, sometimes we don't. It just depends on the player's schedule. And then you've got to look at the light conditions as well. I mean, January it gets dark at 3-4 o'clock. Sometimes we have training sessions in the indoor tent that take away the area that we tend to do a lot of our work in as well. So it's very much juggling a lot of balls around to get the job done. It's not just as simple as we have a studio set up 20 constantly. We have to set that up specifically for each shoot, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying before, doesn't it? The amount of work that actually goes into the series of photos that the club end up putting out.
It's not just a case of like turning up with a camera and going, oh, smile, click. There's a lot of things involved. There's a lot of behind the scenes, like getting props and the shirts. And I don't know if you remember when we signed Joe Willock, we had the Newcastle jumper, which is known as the Joe Willock jumper. And then like that sold out the shop within a few days of it being released. So that there is a lot of things that go into doing a signing, and I guess I get a little bit frustrated with fans when they're constantly tagging you in saying, oh, when's this? And it's like, I can't say anything. And, we'll release it when it's done. The deal has to be done. It has to be signed, sealed, delivered before we can say anything.
there's no patience with transfers when it comes to Newcastle United fans. It's just
No.
the number one topic, I think, on everyone's lips in Newcastle is the transfers, and it's just the fans go nuts for it, don't they?
They do, and they turn up to the training ground and they're over the fences and they're trying to get that first little iPhone photo of somebody walking down St James Park, and it's like, oh, just let us do our jobs, please.
I don't know if you've seen, we've even got plane spotters. So
yes.
People that follow the aeroplanes and link everyone. It's a wild ride being on Twitter. And
we have people turn up to the airport and like shooting through the fences and just to get the first shot. And it's like, why?
We've got Serena spotters these days as well, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, the pap.
What's that about then? How did that start?
I have a fun relationship with most of the players. I can joke about and have a laugh with all of them, really. So one day, obviously, like I take their photos constantly. And one day, Callum Wilson turned up in his car at the ground and gets out, and he starts taking photos of me taking his photo. And I put it on Instagram as a bit of a joke, saying, you know, oh, pap the pap, whose photo's the better one, mine or his? And it just sort of started from there. And then the next home game, Isaac turned up and he did it as well. And then my colleagues started doing it. And then before I knew, all the fans started to do the same. So they start taking photos of me taking their photos and put it on Instagram and on their stories and tagging me in. And it's funny. It's a good laugh. I enjoy it.
That's the magic of social media, isn't it?
It brings you closer to the fans as well. Which is an important thing. It's really important that we have a good connection with the fans.
I am a very big Joelinton fan, and I have been for a long time. Is he as nice as he seems to be?
Yes, he is lovely, and he has been a very underrated player for a long time. And you know, I work with some photographers. One in particular, I'm not going to name any names, but he was, you know, Joelinton is like as fans do. He is a Newcastle fan, and I said to him, you know, nah, he's just hasn't clicked yet. He's, you know, you wait and see. And then obviously Eddie came in, and Joe has been playing amazing. And then my photographer friend came up and he's like, oh, can you do me a favor? I'm like, yeah, sure. He said, oh, can you get something signed? And I'm like, all right, who is it? He went, Joelinton. And I went, what? Who? And he's like, can you get something from Joelinton? I'm like, really? And so I wind him up quite a bit because, yeah, Joe is a lovely lad. He's pretty quiet. When he gets around the Spanish-speaking players, he comes a little bit more to life because obviously, you know, the language barrier.
Yeah,
it's not as bad as what it used to be for him, but it's still not as easy as English. But he's a pleasant person to work with.
Yeah, you can just tell that, can't you? His smile says it all, I think. You know, every
his
time
smile
he smiles,
when he scored at, was it Brentford?
Yeah, the header against Brentford, yeah.
And like obviously, like with my job, my aim is to get the goals and the celebrations. And so I'm sitting up the end where our attacking end, and he scores and he runs all the way back down the other end to the fans. And I'm like, here, no. And so after the game, I'm like, Joe, why did you do that? I said, you know where I sit? And he's like, I had to, it was for the fans. And I'm like, right, well, next time I'm going to sit with the fans and you can come to me.
You're more important than the fans, yeah.
Well, Joe Willock scored the same and he celebrated over to where I was sat. So it kind of made up for that. But I'm constantly, for away games, I'm constantly now going, where do I sit? Do I sit with our fans or do I cover our attack? Because if they score, generally they run down to the fans. Why would you celebrate in front of the home fans.
Yeah.
So it's really, from my perspective, from a photography perspective, it's really a difficult decision to make, because sometimes, and again, Chris Wood, he scored and celebrated to their fans, and I was sat down with ours thinking that he'd run this way, and he was like, oh no, that would take up too much energy.
You took one of Bruno after he scored his goal, and I know you were pleased with that one, because that was that must have been perfect for you, because you were there in front of the fans, the goal was in front of the fans. It was an absolutely ridiculous goal anyway, and then you got a shot of him right down, he was celebrating right in front of you, wasn't he?
I did. Funnily enough, like where I was sat, I didn't see the goal, and Bruno was completely blocked. So I've got, I think was it Jacob Murphy that perhaps did a little crossover or something?
It was, I think, can't remember who crossed it, and then Big Dan Burn headed it back and he backheeled it in.
It might have been, I might have got Dan Burn or whoever it was that did it back over to Bruno. I've got that, but then obviously Bruno's all blocked. Everyone was there, so, and I didn't even see him. I saw the sort of ball go in, and then I saw him running towards me, and I just get up and stand up and make myself as big as possible, because to say, here I am, come to me, please. And then he ran all the way over. Joe Willock went to do a knee slide and fell down.
Please say you got that in pictures. That would be fantastic.
I got it partially. I was like more focused on Bruno and trying to get a tight photo, but you could just see Joe sort of going ooh, over. And I looked at the photos at the time thinking, what are you doing? And then it wasn't until I saw the replay later on that I realized what had happened, and I messaged Joe. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're photobombing the Bruno's photos here.
And speaking of Dan Burn, he must be in all of your photos because he's so big. How do you...
Well, that's another thing. That's something that makes me laugh. For some reason, every time they come out to line up, Ryan Fraser's stand next to Dan Burn.
It's like it's his son or something.
Yeah, and even in the dressing room photos, like that's another thing that's been brought in under Eddie Howe, is it's constantly Dan Burn and Ryan are standing next to each other. So.
It's comical, isn't it?
It's good. It's good. They have a bit of a laugh about it as well. I think Ryan isn't offended by that in any way, which it's a good thing, because some people do get a bit worried about their height.
What are your favorite type of photos then? Are they the ones like Bruno's goal, like the action ones, or is it the ones of signings that everyone's going to go, that all the fans are going to go crazy for, or is it something else?
For me personally, I love the celebration photos. That's what I'm there for. It shows them enjoying their game. I do like the signing photos and stuff like that as well, but it tends to get a bit samey, if you know what I mean. Like there's only a certain amount of different things that you can do, and particularly just at the moment, like with the training ground, we have like limited spaces to work in, so you are restricted in what you have at hand. So yeah, you have to get creative. I'll put it to you that way. But some days you don't have that creativity in you, and it's.
So when you're taking an action shot, and we've just scored and it's at St. James's Park, the adrenaline must be, with you. So to stay calm and take a good shot, is that something that's built up over experience, or does that get easier now, or is it still like?
Do you know, I guess because I'm not a fan, because I get a lot of messages as well from fans saying, I don't know how you're not jumping up and down and going mental. And I guess because I haven't been brought up with the how everyone is at the club, like the fans. It's not been part of me since a young age. So I'm there to do my job. And then once I've got my job and I'm looking at my photos going, yeah, you've got it. Yes. And then I start singing with the fans and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy. I've done that. Perfect. But for me, it's what's happening in front of me, I need to capture that. So I there's times where I'm like pushing stewards out the way to get to where I need to be. And yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the really famous photo of Shola Amiobi on a bike eating an apple. So it was when we were on a training trip to Dublin once.
Yes, that was my colleague who took that, Ian Horrocks. Yeah.
I was going to ask if that was you or if that was somebody else, but
no, that was before my time. Like
that, that's kind of like a really like iconic photo for Newcastle fans. It's just like, it's a silly one, but sometimes things like that can really kind of get a life of their own and become really popular. Mm-hmm. Have you got any personal kind of favorite or iconic, which you probably don't want to call your own photos iconic, but do you know what I mean? Any photos that you've got favorites that have become like that, or that you can particularly think of?
I have one particular image that I've taken at the Tottenham game. It hasn't been released because of just reasons beyond my control. But it was of Amanda and the chairman, mm-hmm. and both of them are smiling and pointing, and it will get released at some point. I'm not sure when, but I'm kind of hoping like we might do a book later on down the track, and this is how it all began kind of thing, and hopefully that photo will come to light, because it's an amazing image that will go down in Newcastle's history. It just hasn't been put out yet, which it's a shame, but
look forward to it.
That Tottenham game, it kind of leads me into what I was going to ask, which is about kind of your sort of favorite moments or favorite matches or favorite occasions that you've been involved with, and sort of either on or off the pitch. I can imagine that one was a very memorable one.
That one will go down in history. That particular game, I mean, even though we didn't win, the atmosphere in the ground was sensational. I mean, I remember obviously like my first game against Man U, and I had never experienced anything like that before. Coming to that game, it was just electric, and yeah, it's just getting better all the time now. Yeah, the city's a special place when it's got that mood about it, isn't it? Definitely. But as soon as the fans get behind everyone, that's when everything just lifts up, and it's like the other team are playing against the 12th man, because our fans are just so vocal, and it's just such an amazing atmosphere to be sat in.
And I suppose war flags as well has contributed to some incredible imagery, haven't they?
Yeah. I love seeing what they're going to do every game. Recently, they just went over into the East Stand, and they had like a whole row of massive flags at the front line of the East Stand. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go around this time. So it was just after the warm-up had finished, and so I chucked my kit in the dugout, and I kind of walked around as quick as I could and walked up and down the stands as quick as I could, trying to capture everything, and then run back for like the players coming out. So I got my steps in that day, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to be fit for your job as well.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm fit. I'm exhausted the next day, I'll put it that way. But there was one game actually where we had a beautiful sunset, and the sky was really, really pink, and it was half time. I'd moved all my stuff back to where I needed to go, and I thought, right, I'm going to go and do a shot over the dugout and get the Newcastle United sign and have this beautiful pink sunset, because obviously the Sports Direct signs came down, so a lot of our imagery is years old, and we just really don't have a lot without the Sports Direct signs anymore. So I thought, right, go on, just go off and do it. And then so I've done that shot, and then I'm like, oh, it'd be nice from that angle in the corner of the Milburn stand and Lee's end. So off I go there, and I've taken a picture. I'm like, it'd be really nice if it was a bit higher up. So I'm climbing up the stairs, and meanwhile the game's just, started to go, and I'm like, right, take that. Oh, I'd really like one from behind the goal in the Leazers. So off I go behind the goal. Right, you better get back down to your spot by the corner flag. So off I twaddle down and sit down. No sooner had I sat down, picked up my big camera, and I think it was Maxi scored. And thankfully I got his goal, and he celebrated towards my way, and I was like, that was really close. Like if it had been about 30 seconds sooner, I wouldn't have got any of it, because I would have still been up in the stand.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was watching something on your Twitter the other day, and it was a nice moment where you were taking photos after a game, and Rafa came up to you and he kind of tapped you on the back and he gave you a cuddle.
Yeah.
I was wondering who are you kind of some of your favorite people that you've worked with? You've already said that Rafa, when he came back, got you really involved, and that was when he came back full time. But yeah, who've been some of your kind of favorite people to have worked with? Managers or players or backroom staff, and sort of why have they been favorites for you?
I'd have to say, like, to start off, Chris Hughton was amazing when he came. I didn't have a lot to do when I was the assistant. I didn't have a great deal to do other than work at St James Park. So there was a few times where I had to fill in for my colleague, and Chris Hughton was amazing. He was very welcoming. Being a girl in a man's world can be quite difficult, especially in football. But he made me feel really welcome at the training ground, and always happy to see you there. Rafa, obviously, funnily enough, I had a photo that I put into my portfolio of Rafa when he was at Liverpool, and I think it was his first game at St James Park when I first started. Where he's looking straight down the lens and smiling at me, and so, like, when he came, I'm like, look at this is you from years ago. Like, Eddie is definitely a manager that I'm really proud to be associated with. Him and all of his backroom staff. Since they've come in, they've just been fantastic. They're so upbeat, they're so positive, and I try to bring that as well, positivity. I don't like to look at negative things, and it really annoys me when lots of people just look at the negatives all the time instead of focus on the positives. That's what's going to take us forward. All of the staff that I work with, in terms of my media staff, we're like a little family, and we're all there for each other. We all back each other. We fight like family, but yeah, we've got a strong team, really strong team.
It's really nice to hear as a supporter that those names you've mentioned are people that the fans really connected with as well. So Chris Hughton is such a lovely person, everyone says that. And the way he presents himself in the media is really good. Rafa was so popular. I think a lot of because of what he achieved before he got to Newcastle, but also because of his work ethic and the fact he did that thing that he talked about, where he wanted to get to know the city, and he had the Liverpool connection, and Liverpool and Newcastle are quite similar places in a lot of ways. And it's especially nice to hear you talk that way about Eddie Howe, because we've already talked a little bit about him. He's just been fantastic, and I think you used the word proud there, and we're proud as well. Me and Bobby talk about this quite often, and I wrote an article for our website about how Newcastle are proud to have him. He's proud to be at Newcastle as well. That comes across.
Well, one of the things with Eddie when he first came is all of the staff had a form to fill out, basically saying, this is who I am, this is my job, this is how many kids I've got, this is my partner, my husband, my wife, what have you. These are the things I like to do outside of work. There was a lot of personal information to go into this, and that went back to him and his staff. So they now know everyone by name.
Incredible. That's great.
They take their time to come and speak to you. I could be sitting in the dugout doing some work and Jason Tyndall will come and sit next to us and just have a general chat. You know, there's a lot of managers and their staff that don't do things like that, but I have to say they're a different class. They're amazing.
It's he's building the culture, isn't he? He's building the culture throughout the whole club, and I think that's probably why he was high up on the list to get the job as manager. Yeah. And it's really good that the owners have recognised that, I think, and have got him in.
Well, it's a togetherness, and I think that's what started the dressing room photos that we do.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, obviously, like the first one was a home game, and at the time, we had COVID. COVID is still something. We have different zones that we're allowed in and out of, and you have to be tested 24 hours before the game, and you have to have a specific pass to get into specific areas. So I'm tested like the team, but also there's a limit of how many people can be in that zone at any particular time. So this particular game that we won, and Eddie wanted me in the dressing room, I hadn't been given the red zone access. So basically the red zone access is access to the pitch, in front of the dugouts and inside the dressing room areas, anywhere where the players go. Even though I'm red zone tested, I hadn't been given a pass. So after we'd won, I get a phone call from my colleague, and it's, we need you in the dressing room now. Like, bearing in mind, I had no idea, that this was going to be a thing or this was happening. So I pack up my equipment, I race it down to the dugouts, and I put it where I think it's safe. And trying to get into the red zone, they have to scan you in, but I couldn't get my pass up on my phone because the internet is so bad at St James's Park.
It is, isn't it?
And I'm like, I'm red zone, just let me in. And in the end, I just said, look, just take my phone and try and sort it out because I haven't got time for this. And I threw the guy my phone and just ran into the dressing room, and then did the big team photo. And another story with another team photo is, like, I get quite nervous in front of big crowds, and obviously, like, in front of all the squad and the backroom staff, I start to panic, my palms start to sweat, and I get a bit anxious. So I've been allowed to go in for the second team photo, and Eddie does his speech, and I go to run and jump up onto the benches in the dressing room. Unbeknown to me, my shoelace was untied. And so the foot that I wasn't jumping had, like, held my other foot down. So I've, like, projected forwards, smashed into the bench, smashed into, like, I actually ended up inside the area that they hang the shirts, and smashed my camera at the same time. I thought maybe only 2 or 3 people saw. Our security guy ran over straight away, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yep, I'm fine. Get out of the way, I'm fine." Stand up on the bench. I'm like, "Everyone get together, come on." And then I'm like, "Yeah," like, and so everyone starts cheering. I take the photo and I go outside and almost collapsed. And I'd actually cracked some ribs because I'd hit it so hard because I was so nervous. So, like, now when I go in the dressing room, I actually just walk very calmly and, like, okay. Don't be so panicked about it. But and then I found out that probably a third of the players actually saw what had happened, and I was quite embarrassed by it, to be fair.
You always check your shoelaces down, don't you, when you go?
I double tie my shoelaces now, so they will not come undone. Yeah. They will not come undone.
The team photos after wins, then, that's a thing now, isn't it? After every win,
it is, and it's really hard, especially, like, for away games, because previously the way I worked was, I do all the match action, do my fans' photos before and during the game, and then after the game, a lot of the fans like to stay and chant and enjoy winning and stand and have photos and what have you. So I would spend probably 15-20 minutes after the game just taking photos of the fans enjoying themselves. But obviously now, if we win, Eddie wants me in the dressing room, So I've like got to pack up all my kit really quickly. I'm taking photos of them clapping the fans. I'm turning around, taking a few photos of the fans, packing everything up and racing around to then get my kit back out again to go into the dressing room, like swapping lenses, putting flashes on, and then getting in there and then like just trying to make sure I get a decent photo because I'm so like, oh, there's so much going on.
And
There kind of like needs to be 4 or 5 of me around.
Yeah, but it's what we're saying about the culture. That's a thing that the fans look forward to, you know. We because it's the games are on at kind of the middle of the night here or first thing in the morning, so it's like. But we've been saying in our chat sometimes we can't go to bed until we've seen the photo. We want to see the photo.
Oh, sorry.
Sometimes it's like 5 a.m. and it's like, you know, with young kids, as you know, it's like we'll be up in a couple of hours, but I'm not going to bed until I see that photo. That just caps off a win, doesn't it?
It does, and that's the thing. Like the very first photo that I did, it was just meant to be internally. It wasn't meant to go externally. But obviously, the players get. I have a website where I put all the photos that the players get access to, so they can download stuff for their social media, and then my staff have access as well. So. My social media guy, he gets my photos straight off the camera within seconds of it happening. We've got like a system set up there, so he can be like tweeting and stuff like that. But that initial first time we did the team photo was just meant to be internal, and then we got a little bit of negative feedback from some people saying, "Oh, have you just won the cup? You know, you've just won one game." And it wasn't about that. It was about building that team culture, as you say, and building that togetherness. And that's what that team photo is about. It's everyone's together. All the backroom staff are together. Everyone is one.
Yeah, and the club and the fans are going to have to get used to the more kind of high profile and the more, hopefully the more success we have, we're going to have to get used to these attacks from outside maybe, or from people denigrating things that happen a little bit. So it's kind of the siege mentality that we're going to have a bit.
I think we've found that since the takeover. You know, like our fans weren't happy in the Mike Ashley era. And now that we've been taken over, that's been scrutinised. And I think it doesn't matter what Newcastle do, we're always in the media. We're always in the media.
Yeah.
And we have a big sign in the press room, and it says "Never a dull moment." And you know, it's so true. It's just working at Newcastle is so true. There is never anything dull ever.
Yeah. It's the highest highs or the lowest lows, isn't it? It's such a it's such a bipolar football club.
Yeah, and it's difficult for the people that work there as well, because you get dragged into that whether you want to or not. You know,
and that's it. Sorry, I was going to say that's another thing about Eddie Howe, which you can see he's calm and he's balanced, and that's what hopefully that's going to project out into the players and the club itself. That kind of sense of equilibrium.
Yeah, he's amazing. As I said, I've said it several times, and
you know, you can keep saying it. We love it.
We're like, huge fans. We I think when it happened, me and Jack were the ones that were just so happy to have Eddie Howe, and we've just continued it on, and we've just had this sense of pride. So you coming on saying what you have is
I mean, I was absolutely gutted when Rafa left. I mean, like seriously, like I cried for days on end. I didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to him personally. I did via text message, and we still keep in touch now. He messaged me before the Everton game, which was really lovely of him, and I look forward to actually seeing him in person again sometime, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. But you know, I just love Eddie and his team. They're just so positive.
Let's touch on the new owners a little bit before we finish then. So there was stories about when Amanda took over. She addressed the club staff, and it was a really positive story about how she kind of got everyone together, said that this was kind of what they wanted to do. And that was the day after the takeover, and I think they were caught on the fly a little bit as well. It was like it all happened in a very short space of time. But what's Amanda Staveley and Murdad? What have they been like to work with or to be involved with since they took over?
All I can say about them is how my personal dealings with them, and they have been fantastic with me from day one. I met both Amanda and Murdad the day of that discussion that we had at St James Park. They invited all of the staff in, and it was kind of like just a big conference room, and they had the top table. They sat down and they spoke to everyone. They asked questions. They allowed staff members to ask questions. I was there taking photographs. I got a very, very short amount of time to take a couple of pictures with them. Again, it was difficult because we still had all the Sports Direct signs in the ground, and it was difficult trying to take something that didn't have that in. It was like, yeah, you had to be very creative. So cropping into pictures and stuff like that was hard. But they were brilliant. I spoke with them about their family, and they spoke about mine. And I've had a great relationship since with them. So
fantastic.
Yeah, and just to top it off, like, I had been in the same room as Mike Ashley once. I had seen him get off of his helicopter at the training ground once, and I never had anything to do with him. I never met the man. I've met both Murdad and Amanda. I speak with them constantly. Whenever they see us, they come and give me a big hug and a kiss, and it's just so different.
Again, they seem like brilliant people just in their interactions and the way they conduct themselves. And it's funny, we sort of, as fans, we see through a lot of things, but we can also see the good in a lot of people. And the reception they've got and the popularity they've got is because of who they are. And it's fantastic to hear that, because I think it's better for our club and better for the people who are at the club as well.
Mm-hmm. They work hard. They're working very hard.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot to do.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, they've got other businesses. They're very successful business people in their own right. So it's not just the Newcastle United that they're concerned with, but for you to say these things, like, it's so good as fans to hear you say this. Honestly, it really is, and it confirms the impression that we're getting from kind of the outside, that this is what's happening. And the last thing I just want to ask is, where do you see the club going in the next 5 to 10 years? You're until you get to see what's going on. Where do you think we can go?
Well, I mean, the aim is obviously the Champions League, and I hope in my lifetime I get to work at least one season in that. I am 45. Doing the job that I do, it drains you. There's a lot of heavy lifting. Photographers get back issues a lot, but I hope to at least get 1 or 2 seasons in the Champions League, maybe win a few trophies. That's where I'd like to see the club go. I really would, and hopefully we can achieve that. I think the Newcastle fans deserve that. Yeah.
So, Serena, I think we've taken up enough of your time on your Thursday morning, and it's almost bedtime in Australia. So.
Sorry. I could talk all day, really.
We honestly, can talk all night.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. So, thanks so much for coming on. It's really special for us to get somebody not only within the club, but with the Australian link as well.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute honour. I've really enjoyed speaking to both of you about the club that I love as well, because this is my family now. As I said, all of my family are back in Australia, so the only family that I have here in this country, other than my 2 children, is the club that I work for.
Yeah,
it's my life here, basically.
Well, you're welcome to come back on any time. So we'll keep in touch.
Fabulous.
Definitely.
Please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. We're on website twoandunder.com. We're on Twitter @twoanunderpod, and we're on Facebook as well. We'll be back for a preview of the Spurs game next week, I believe, and we've also got a fan Q&A coming up, so we'll look forward to that. Bobby, thanks very much.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Serena. It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you again. Thank you again, Serena.
Thank you. Thanks, Australia.
We'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.